With all the 1990s style, nostalgia that's going on these days, I kind of want to throw my hat in the ring. Remember the 90s? Remember whenever, the people that are on this earth right now were much smaller or not dead? Remember whenever I had more hair on my forehead, up here in this area where it's gone? Okay, you guys probably don't remember that, but I do. Those were good times. Remember whenever cartoons were great, whenever music was great? I remember whenever Corrosion and Conformity were releasing just phenomenal albums in the 1990s. I remember whenever albums such as Blind or Animosity came out, or Wise Blood. So, yeah, this is a nostalgic twist that's definitely perpetuated to what we're talking about today, and that's the new Corrosion of Conformity album, their second ever since the departure of Pepper Keenan to focus more on his activities with Down, and it's an album that's entitled 9. Once again, we have Mike Dean handling the vocal helm on this album, as well as the bass, and this is one where Corrosion of Conformity is kind of reverting back to a nostalgic tradition, something that they were able to kind of, shake hands with a little bit on Corrosion of Conformity, the self-titled album that came out a couple of years back. However, this is one that's being explored with a little bit more efficiency and a little bit more consistency here on 9 in 2014. Now, Corrosion of Conformity is a band that has a long and lauded history, and within the 1990s they were charting and actually selling pretty well. Now, everything is kind of down these days, so you can understand that their last album only pulled about, 9,000 copies at the last, look. However, it's still something where, for a band of that variety, that's still pretty good. So what does 9 have that really makes it a strong album? Because this is one that, right off the bat, I'll tell you, I consider to be a strong album. And where does that whole stoner vibe really come into play? This is definitely something where if you listen to the classic 90s material, you hear a little bit more of a southern metal charm to it. Something that really resembles a little bit of a Down, sensibility, only one that has a little bit more of a rock-infused radiance to it. So this is one that definitely has a lot of people kind of questioning what you would really consider these guys. But I like the groove, I like the stoner metal idea, and I like the fact that they're just able to produce really, really strong material regardless. And this is one where Corrosion of Conformity, the self-titled album once again that I'm citing, is one that I think showcased the band that was taking the cue of their newfound trio-ness, or the newfound fact that they had become a trio with Pepper's departure, and was really finding themselves once again, and still were able to produce something pretty darn good with it. I feel that 9 is kind of the logical progression of that, where you have now all of a sudden refound yourself or rediscovered where you want to be, and now you're able to write solidly based around that. Because this album definitely has a very traditional vibe to it whenever it comes to COC, but at the same time also feels unique. It feels like they've really embraced this balancing act, this balancing idea, that really keeps all of these songs feeling exceptionally fresh, and, from going one track to another, not really sure what you're going to hear next. Whether it's going to be something that has more of a melodic resonance, something that's, a little bit more slowed down, that really enhances the stoner vibe, if you really want to call it that, or if it's one that's going to have a little bit more of an aggressive take. And, once again, this balancing act is one of the strengths that this album is really able to boast. Something that's definitely able to give it a real, meaning and a real, beast feeling all of its own. Mainly because there's a lot of different fans of Corrosion of Conformity that will listen to this and will definitely have something to really write home about. This is something where those fans of Mike Dean that remember whenever he was singing the earliest albums from this band, including Blind from 1991, will definitely recognize the tone immediately. It's definitely one that will remind them of those days. For those fans that really enjoyed the sound that they were able to incorporate later on in the 1990s and first part of the 2000s, there's twinges of that as well. It's not something where they're necessarily going to go into a Stare Too Long style song. However, it's one where there's still going to be a little bit of an output of creativity. However, I think the strength here is the fact that this is an album that feels very complete, like those albums of old. This isn't one that really lulls or fucks around. This is definitely one that's very direct and in your face. And I have to say that the jams on this disc and the way in which they're able to let the composition breathe whenever they're jamming a little bit and kind of giving you that opportunity to take a hit, either that or, do whatever, definitely feels very pure. It feels natural. It definitely feels like this is where the composition was heading anyway. This is not something where it feels as though it feels out of place, either that or they're attempting to throw some sort of compositional curveball that doesn't really work. This is definitely one that feels very tactically sound. Overall, this is a disc that strength is primarily in the fact that it flows so beautifully. Even with the 51-second interlude that, assaults you with track number 5, feeling a little bit out of place and kind of feeling like it didn't need to be there, it leaves you with a bit of a disjointed feeling going from, the nectar onto On Your Way. It's instead something that just is a minor gripe. Aside from that, this is definitely an album that will please a lot of Corrosion of Conformity fans. Whether they are listening to this for the nostalgic element, so that they listened to this band a lot in the 1990s, or if they've been longtime fans. Either that, or even on a tertiary level, if they're new fans, somebody that saw this band, whether it be live or just in their local record store, decided to sample the disc and really liked what they heard. There's really something here for everybody, and for those new fans, you have a wealth to explore, and while it may be a little bit challenging to find some of this stuff, it's worth it, so track it down. I would definitely give this album a strong 79 out of 100, and it's one where I definitely feel the band has really turned a corner and has become very solid. This isn't necessarily an album that's going to light your world on fire. You're not necessarily going to, fall in love with Corrosion of Conformity all over again. This is instead an album that's just going to kind of rehash the fact that Corrosion of Conformity A is not dead, and B still puts out great music. And really, at this stage of a career, that's all you're really asking for. You're still writing kick-ass music, and you still want people to listen to it, and, have the message and, the music be heard by them. And it's something that in this day and age, with there being so many bands, such a wealth out there, and really the overall musical landscape, seems to be shifting in a different direction, is definitely not an easy thing to do anymore. But this is one I definitely would recommend you check out. So, 9 by Corrosion of Conformity definitely has my seal of approval. But what about you? What did you think about this disc? What was your favorite song, or what's your favorite songs from Corrosion of Conformity, or favorite album? Let me know. And how cool would it be if Pepper rejoined these guys? There were rumors, but I guess they didn't happen. So, what do you think? I liked it. Did you? Also, pass me the bong. I'm gonna go watch Rugrats. Do you know where Mark Mothersbaugh was originally from? Do you? If you do, answer in the comments.